inspired, fully engaged. You're tuning in to Reality with Vicki Gunvalson.
So welcome back to Reality with Vicki. I'm here with a special guest, Kristi Hugstad. Want to thank all of you for joining Reality with Vicki and giving me a 5-star review and downloading. That's what allows us to stay on air. I've got so many great guests coming up. I'm going to have Brianna coming up in a few weeks, talk about our recent road trip. She just moved from North Carolina to the Midwest suburbs where she was born. So I know that she's always been one of the fan favorites with Bravo. So I'm going to have her on. I want to thank all of you that have joined the Financially Fabulous with Vicki Facebook group. In that group, we've been able to really mentor and help a lot of folks that are going through a little bit of hardship right now due to this pandemic. We're working with debt.com on consolidating some debt and just really having a great platform for those of you that are interested. So be sure you join that Facebook group. You have a little bit of homework and download Reality with Vicki and then give me 5 stars or a great review. That's really makes me happy. And that's what allows me to have guests like this on and keep plugging along. So I'm interviewing Kristi Hugstad, and I want to thank you for sending the books to my office. I did get them. I have not had an opportunity to read them yet, but they're very interesting, all different forms of grief, right? So I know that you have an incredible story of turning immense grief of your own into a platform to help others manage grief. So I want to just kind of tell a little bit about you, and then I'm going to give it over to you.
Right.
So what I've heard and what I've read is that for all of your adult life, you've had one clear goal: to provide the highest opportunity for fitness and health to everyone who walks in your studio or gym. A feat that you accomplished daily for years until an unimaginable day in October 2012, when one tragic moment, everything changed. So we're going to talk about that. I know it might be a little bit difficult, but I think it's important. In the wake of your epic grief, you found a new trajectory. You've discovered a deep desire to inspire and help those in need, not just physically, but emotionally, psychologically, and even spiritually. Your mission now is to reach out to those wrestling with grief and offer the opportunity to find a safe place to comfort their pain and fears, to address them, change them, and ultimately move through them to a new perspective in life. Wow. Those were my notes on you. So welcome. I want to thank you for joining us today, and super excited to hear about you, because I think as we get older through life, all of us have weathered some form of grief, right? Yes. So share with me your story and our listeners.
Well, like you said, I've been in the fitness industry for most of my life. And my husband and I had a gym in Dana Point, California.
Okay, near me.
Yes, and we had a nice home overlooking the ocean. So from the outside, it appeared like we really had this perfect life. But on the inside, things were much different. My husband had depression. And what happened in 2012, and I was totally caught off guard, is that he ran in front of a Metrolink train near our home. And to make things even worse, his father was the passenger on that train.
Oh my God.
Bill was on his way to the train station in San Juan to pick him up. So he knew he was coming on that train. So, it was so hard to make sense out of any of it. But now I've started to put together all the pieces of the puzzle. And I realized he had a genetic predisposition to depression. His father had depression. He had a grandparent with a suicide attempt. Now that I've done a lot of reading and research, I'm finally starting to make sense of it. But at the time, I didn't think that could ever transpire. I thought that suicide was something that happened to other people.
Right.
Right. And so.
Wow. Yeah, that's a hard one. Did you leave a note? Did you have any explanation, or was it just really a mental, issue? It wasn't circumstantial. It was probably an ongoing mental.
Absolutely. I think it was a combination of factors. It was kind of the perfect storm. Yeah. But he had a prior attempt, and he at that time left a note, and he said, "Kristi, I know I'm a burden to you. I can't take this any longer. You deserve better. Love, Bill." And there was an empty bottle of pills next to the note. But on the other hand, I could hear the shower running. So I ran in the shower and whipped open the curtain. I said, "What is going on?" And he said, "I took that bottle of pills and I still woke up." Now, I wasn't sure if that was a cry for attention or if he'd really taken those pills. So there was a prior attempt, which is an in-your-face warning sign.
Right.
People that attempt suicide are 4 times more likely to try again. I didn't know that.
Wow, I didn't know that either.
No, but there were so many risk factors and warning signs. He exhibited almost all of them. He was almost textbook.
Wow.
But in my head, I was just trying to fix him. You know, a lot of us women are fixers, right? And I just thought, if I can get you that doctor, that psychiatrist, that psychologist, social worker, church pastor, that magic pill, I'll have my husband back and we can go back to our lives the way they were.
Right. You want to put a Band-Aid on it, right?
Exactly.
So during this pandemic, you know that the suicide rate is all-time high, right?
Yes.
So I think we might be touching on people that have either tried, have experienced it, or had a family member attempt or pass away from suicide. It's a very personal thing for me. One of my family members attempted when she was 21 years old, jumped out of a dormitory window in college and left a note and survived. And actually, when I hear about that pain that people are going through in their mind and brain, I live it personally because it happened to a very close family member of mine. So first of all, I want to extend my sympathy and sorrow to you because now you're stuck figuring it out. But one of the things you are doing is attempting to help others, right? So through your books and through your knowledge of what it's like to go through depression, low mood, suicidal thoughts, my prayer and hope is for anybody listening is to know that there is help out there, right? There is a lot of help out there. So what does a grief recovery specialist do?
I work with people just in the realm of grief. Most of my clients have had someone die by suicide, or they have had suicidal ideation themselves.
Okay.
I also do grief counseling in recovery centers. I work with addicts. So I have clients that are addicts and they come to me and we try to get to the root of the problem of what led them to their addiction. Right. So my specialty is grief. And, there's a real stigma associated with suicide and depression and addiction. And I want to help start conversations so that people feel comfortable talking about their mental health. So those that need help will reach out and get it. That's right. So important.
So where would somebody reach out to get help if they're struggling right now? Give us some resources for people, because I know there's people struggling right now. It's a really tough place for a lot of people.
Right. There are many different crisis hotlines. The one that I have in my latest book, Be Only Better, it's a teen text crisis hotline. Okay. Because kids don't want to pick up the phone and actually speak to another human being. They want to text. And the number is 741-741. Okay. And you will get a crisis counselor on the other end that will help you, talk to you, find out what's going on, try to de-escalate the situation, and then guide you towards resources. So I think if an immediate way to get help is either the 800 suicide hotline number or the teen text crisis hotline.
Yeah, because the teens also are, for whatever reason, that is on the rise now. And I'm thinking, back when I was being raised, I didn't know anybody or any person that would ever even consider or know of anybody that ever, but now it's on the rise. I mean, it's Orange County, it's on the rise. I'm sure it is across the country, but we both live in Orange County. So I just know that to be true. So this pandemic, the repercussions of the pandemic, for the loss of jobs, the loss of the way we knew it, it is definitely a loss and we're all grieving. I don't know many people that aren't. So how does one look at hope if they're losing their house or they lost their job or their marriage is crumbling, all these different things? What can you do or we do as mentors to try to help them? you know?
Well, first and foremost, it's important to understand that grief and loss is not just about death. I have so many people say to me, well, I don't know why I'm feeling so depressed and anxious.
Uh-huh.
Nobody in my family or my group of friends has died.
Mhm.
But there are so many other losses that we grieve. So first, they need their grief validated.
Right.
We have suffered loss of connection, loss of security,
Right.
in a relationship that's going bad, loss of trust, finances. I mean, there's so many different losses that we grieve. It's not just about death. So once you understand that, you are telling yourself it's okay and it's normal that I feel this way. I will do what I can to take steps to move forward in my grief, but it's okay to be grieving right now, and it's normal.
Yeah, it is normal. So those of you that are listening, you're not alone. This is normal. This is part of this bump in the road, the season that we're in. We're going to get through it. We always have, we always will, but you got to hold tight and you got to reach out to those that love you, and also counselors and hotlines that are there to help you. So if there's anything that I'm going to inspire people, that this isn't the end of the road unless you make it the end of the road. There's a lot of life left for all of us, hopefully. So, when people are struggling, how can we support friends and loved ones that are facing these issues without just saying, oh, you're going to be fine? If they're really having suicidal thoughts or low moods or depression and everything seems to be crumbling, friendships are important, family is important. What else can we do other than calling a hotline?
Well, the most important thing is to do what I didn't do. As I said, I was running around trying to fix Bill, get him that magic pill that would bring him back. And I was so obsessed with fixing it that I didn't actually spend the time to sit down next to him, take his hand,
Right.
give him a hug and say, you know what, Bill, I'm here for you. We are going to work on this together. I am going to be here and have your back no matter what. I should have reassured him that I was there for him. He was not a burden to me, and made him feel like we were doing this together as a team. So the best thing that I can tell your listeners to do is be a heart with ears. Be there and listen without judgment. Don't tell them, hey, it's going to get better after the pandemic. We don't know that. So don't offer any kind of false hope. Just meet them where they are and listen and use compassion and love.
Yeah, that's great advice. Great advice. So I watched a clip of yours where you said, unfortunately, grief doesn't go away. So if you don't deal with it, if you don't talk about it, and if you don't get help and resume your normal life, it will sit and wait for you over and over. So tell me a little bit more about that and what that means.
Well, there are people that don't deal with grief. They're good at stuffing it and pretending everything's okay. And that is so unhealthy. That's one of the worst things that you can do, because it does sit and wait for you. And eventually you will have an explosion. And to give you an example, have you ever been at work and you've got all this stress and you've been grieving and it's just building and building and building. And then suddenly you explode over the smallest thing.
Right.
And you're overreacting and people don't understand what's going on with you. But that's because it's like a tea kettle. Eventually it's going to explode, right? So you've got to let it out and you've got to process it.
Okay. That makes sense. That does make sense, because if we don't process it, it festers and festers and festers and festers. And then, like you say, one little thing can just set you off, right? Where it normally wouldn't.
Burst into tears over absolutely nothing. And you don't even know why you're upset.
Right, right. So another question I have for you is, what do you recommend for people that are struggling right now that may be hesitant to reach out when there's a lot of us, right? Is there anything that people can do on their own? So I know when I'm struggling, I journal. I journal. If you're not journaling now, listeners, it helps. It does give you an opportunity to put your words out onto paper, close it up, put it in a safe or wherever under your mattress. Nobody ever has to see it. But when times get better, you can go back and go, wow, I got through that. And then when they go bumpy again, you go, I got through it again. And you put your thoughts down. So I've been journaling since I started the Housewives of Orange County. Because I thought every episode I was going to die of embarrassment or die of humiliation. being on a reality show for 14 years, you go through a lot of trauma through what they're portraying you as, which isn't always necessarily the facts. So I would go home and I would journal. Okay, Kelly said this about me, or Tamara said this about that. And I would put it down and I would close it and go to the next page, because what I did was once I put it down, then I walked away from it. So I don't know if you journal, but it helps. It helps a lot. And then when you do get to a good place, you can go back and go, I got through that. So that means I'm going to get through the next one. Right?
Absolutely. I started writing books because of my journaling. And it's important to understand that you are journaling for you. Right. I needed to do that. I needed to get my thoughts and feelings on paper in front of me, because I had a lot of anger. I was angry at Bill. I was angry at his parents. Right. I was directing my anger at anybody that I could.
Listen, right.
And I needed to process that. So by writing it down, it validated how I felt. It was a little scary at first, because once I start writing about it, it made it very real. So there were times when I was writing right after Bill's death where I was just shaking. But like you said, 6 months down the road, I reread what I had written the first couple of weeks. Right. And it was like I was a different person at that time.
Wow. Isn't that crazy?
And it's really healthy to say, or to realize I really am moving forward in my grief. I have come pretty far. And really, that's one of the few ways that you can actually mark your progress.
Right. And I think as we get older and more mature in life, that I am, and I think you are too, is we're going to experience grief. It's part of life, right? Whether it's a divorce, whether it's a betrayal, whether it's a death, we're going to experience grief. So if we know that's going to be coming sometime in our life, then if we can know how to help ourselves through it, then we'll be better off. I think that's the biggest thing we'll learn from this, is just knowing that this will be part of life always, forever and ever and ever.
Well, I didn't think grief was going to happen to me. I thought grief only happened to other people. Mm-hmm. And I don't know about you, but I think when we grew up, our emotions and feelings and people dying or pets dying, we never talked about that kind of stuff. We didn't have any tools. Right. I don't remember in college or high school learning anything about grief or given any tools. It just wasn't part of our upbringing. Right. And that's why I'm writing books with the hopes to get them in the schools. So when you're in junior high, you are understanding all of the different issues that are common at your age. You're given tools of self-care to keep you from getting to that place where you have so much anxiety and depression that you don't want to be here anymore. Right. So my whole mission right now is to start young, because we didn't have that growing up.
No, we didn't. When you were saying that, I went back into time in high school for me. I was all about having one boyfriend the whole high school year, and I did. In senior year, he broke up with me because he wanted to know if I was the one. And it devastated. It was not death, but for me, at that time in my life, we were supposed to go to prom the next week. And he's like, I want to break up with you because I want to see if you're the one. I was devastated. And I was going through horrible, it was literally like a death. And, everybody's grief is different, whether it's abandonment, whether it's death, whether it's breaking up in high school. I mean, people do definitely go through grief of losing a job, grief of losing a home, all those different levels. So I think that if we can know that it's normal to experience grief, and through our friends and family and the people that love us so much, we can get through it. And
absolutely.
That's the hope that we're giving everybody today.
When you're a young high school girl, your brain is not fully developed till you're about 23, right? You do not have the capability of processing what's happening. Right. So if you think back, if you compare what's going on right now, if I asked you, Vicki, what are 3 of the most stressful things in your life? It would probably be that one of them would probably be that breakup in high school.
Yep. It's as real as you get, because I had the dress and we had the couple friends all planned, and I had everything all figured out. I was having the before party, and I was like, why are you doing this right now? Like, we're supposed to be together. So I think that fell through my whole life, of the fear of somebody leaving me or abandoning me, because it was embarrassing. All my friends had dates and I was senior year, and I was saying, oh my God, I got with that guy around the corner that I don't even really like. And I did. But it was grief. And as crazy as it sounds, it's not like you. But again, my grief at 18 was different than what you experienced with. It's still grief, it's not the same
Absolutely.
level, but it's still grief.
And it's also really important to never compare your grief, because what I went through at my age and what you went through at 17, maybe as a 17-year-old, it was as devastating to you.
Right.
Because some of the most devastating things that I went through were when I was in junior high and I was bullied.
Yeah.
I still remember that pain.
It's hurtful.
And so, it's grief and loss is so individual, but we really can't compare grief.
Right.
People say, well, that's the worst thing I've ever heard of, is to lose a loved one by suicide.
Right.
But,
oh God, that's horrible. So I have no words. So other than, I'm sorry. So is there anything that you can help our listeners take away from our conversation? Because every time I do my podcast, and by the way, thank you listeners for signing in and downloading us and giving us a 5-star review. It keeps me keeping on. But I want to be a sense of hope and inspiration for every single podcast that I do, whether it's financial, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, giving people hope in this world, that whether we're in a pandemic or not, I just want to be the center of influence to try to keep them on track, because it's a tough life out there, right? And we're going alone sometimes. So
absolutely. I want your listeners to know that they're not alone in grief. It's a natural part of life. Mm-hmm. And if you are struggling with any mental health issues, please reach out and get help. My goal is to get rid of the stigma of mental illness. And the only way we can do that is if we start conversations. It should be a part of everyday conversation, and it's not. And think of your mental health just as you would your physical health. If you broke your leg, which I think you have, you wouldn't get into bed for a week and hope it heals itself. Right. You would immediately get medical care. Right. But if you have a mental disorder, you crawl into bed, you're ashamed, you buy into the stigma, and most of us don't get help. And that's got to change. So if you're struggling with anything emotionally, mentally, please reach out and get help and try to work with all of us to eliminate that stigma of mental illness.
Give that number again for our listeners and our viewers.
The Teen Crisis text line, 741-741.
Okay, that's good. So if they're in a different area code, do they have to put 949 in front of it, or is that it's all over the United States? Okay, good. So let's talk about the titles of your books. So I know it was about a cat and a dog, and I've got them all at my desk.
Okay, well, my first book is What I Wish I'd Known, Finding Your Way Through the Tunnel of Grief. That's my story in great detail about what happened with my husband. And the point of that was just to make it relatable to people. He was the great pretender, right? So then the second half of the book are tools for grief with examples of what I did personally. So in other words, if I'm talking about journaling, there's part of my journal in there, how to get started. So it's a black and white book. Here's what to do. I didn't want anybody to have to go through what I was going through. And then my second book is called Beneath the Surface, A Teen's Guide to Reaching Out When You or Your Friend is in Crisis. And that is, every chapter is an issue that our teens face today. Cyberbullying, peer pressure, academic pressure, parental pressure, substance abuse, anxiety, depression, on and on. And then stories of real teens around the country that actually had that issue and how they overcame it. And there again, there's what to do, where to go for help, and then all the resources at the end.
Nice.
Okay. And the book that just came out last month is Self-Care. And the title's called Be You, Only Better, Real Life Self-Care for Young Adults and Everyone Else. So the goal of this book is I want you to start taking care of yourself before you get to that point where you're depressed and have anxiety and don't want to be here.
Right.
So this book is all the self-care tools you need. And then the science behind them, because if you're like me, you can't tell me to journal. You can't tell me to eat healthy. I know that's probably going to help, but I want to know how it changes my brain. Why should I do that? Mm-hmm. And then in addition to the science, at the end, it's how to get started.
Got it.
Because, you just start writing in a journal, right? I mean, you're probably a very good writer. That's not true for most people. So there's journaling prompts in there. Here's what to ask yourself to get you started.
Nice.
And then my last 3 books is where I am right now. And the title of the books are Returning to Joy, and they're 4-color inspirational gift books. And the first one is Inspiration for Grieving the Loss of a Loved One. Second one is Inspiration for Grieving the Loss of Your Dog. And the third one is Inspiration for Grieving the Loss of Your cat. Because so many of my clients have said, I'm so devastated. My dog died. My friend's dog died. What do I do for them? What do I send flowers? Our pets are as big a part of our lives as our family and friends. And if not more so. And so this is a perfect gift. It's full of beautiful images of different breeds of cats and dogs. And then the People book is beautiful quotes.
Wonderful. Wow, you have really enlightened me on all the different ways we can get through grief. I don't think it's something that people talk about a lot. I think we kind of stuff it under a rug and go over that bump all the time. So I think that it's so good to know that people like you are out there, you've experienced it, you've been in it, and you can shed some light on those that are suffering. So that's the most important thing. So I want to thank you. If we run into each other at all in Orange County, make sure you give me a hug, because I'm all about that.
Sure will.
And I just want to thank the listeners. Hopefully this will give you a little bit of inspiration. And if you haven't experienced grief yet, know that sometime in your life you might, and there's a lot of resources out there for you. So I wish everybody health and happiness and no grief, but life is going to give us some bumps. And I want to encourage all of you to get through those bumps, because it's a season. And journal and write down your thoughts so you can know that next month or 5 months from now, it will be different than what it is today. Okay. So my very best to you. I want to thank you. Those of you that have listened, give me 5 stars, subscribe to Reality with Vicki. And, sincerely, I want to thank you, Kristi, for joining us today. Okay?
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good day. Okay. Bye.
Now, glutathione is a big word, but it's the body's own master antioxidant. So it's a scavenger for free radicals, for bacteria, and what's relevant now, viruses. This is new to the marketplace. There's no other product on the market that has the ingredient NACET.
And basically NACET increases the production of that glutathione that is in our body already to strengthen and enhance our immune system and keep it strong. Elevated sense of well-being. Supports muscle strength and endurance. Cognitive function. Powerful liver support. Energy. Helps blood sugar regulation. Superior bioavailability of key ingredients.
One of your best defenses against COVID is a strong immune system. Taking GSH Plus as a daily supplement does all that. And now we have the product out on the marketplace.